Imagine walking into a room, maybe it's a networking event or like a new classroom or even just a friend's crowded kitchen. Someone catches your eye, they smile warmly, they walk over, shake your hand, and ask 4 very simple words. Tell me about yourself.
Oh boy, the absolute dreaded question.
Right. I mean, in your native language, this is, effortless. You have a whole lifetime of context to draw from. But in English, suddenly the floor just completely drops out from under you.
Your mind goes entirely blank.
Totally blank. Your palms start to sweat. Your heart is just hammering against your ribs. And for this terrifying second, you literally forget your own name.
It's the absolute peak of conversational anxiety.
Yeah.
I mean, it feels less like a friendly chat and more like a spotlight that suddenly just snapped onto you in a dark theater, right? And this invisible audience is waiting for some flawless, completely unscripted monologue.
And that feeling, that visceral deer-in-the-headlights freeze, is exactly what we are dismantling today. So, welcome to the Deep Dive. We are so genuinely happy you are here with us right now.
We really are. And we have a very special focused mission today. We're talking directly to you, the language learner.
Exactly. We are going to take a slow, highly supportive, and, deeply analytical journey into mastering one of the most terrifying but, essential skills you will ever need, introducing yourself confidently in English.
And we are going to take our time with this. There is absolutely no rush. Language is this living, breathing mechanism. It's not a math test with a strict time limit. Learning how to present yourself should feel like learning how to open a door to a new relationship, not standing trial.
Opening a door. I really like that framing. But, before we get to the heavy mechanics of opening that door, let's talk about the hallway leading up to it. Small talk.
Yes, the warm-up.
Because there's a reason we don't just walk up to strangers and immediately demand their life story, right?
Yeah.
It's a warm-up. So just to model that really naturally, how did your morning actually start today?
Because I was up way before the sun, the house was completely silent, the air was a little crisp, and I took, about 20 minutes to brew a really large, methodical pot of green tea.
Wow. Okay. That sounds incredibly grounding. I, on the other hand, was not quite so zen this morning.
No?
Not at all. I woke up feeling a bit like a zombie who had forgotten how to walk. I just sort of stumbled into the kitchen and had to make the absolute strongest, darkest roast coffee I could possibly find. It was purely medicinal. I needed the caffeine just to convince my eyes to stay open.
I've definitely had those mornings.
Yeah.
Now, for you listening right now, let's just freeze that moment. That exchange right there is the perfect anatomical structure of natural, everyday English.
It really is.
Yeah.
Notice how it's not overly complex. Right. I didn't use advanced academic vocabulary to describe, the oxidation level of my tea leaves, and you didn't use medical terminology to describe your fatigue. We just talked about tea, coffee, waking up, and feeling tired.
And that is the entire core function of small talk. It's basically a biological signaling system. It removes that immediate social pressure and signals to the other person's nervous system, hey, we are safe. We are just two human beings sharing a routine reality. It establishes a baseline rhythm.
But then we hit that wall. The baseline rhythm is flowing beautifully. We're talking about coffee or the weather or the terrible traffic. And then they ask you to introduce yourself. And that feeling of safety just completely evaporates.
It vanishes.
I want to dig into the why here. What exactly is happening in our brains when that question is asked? Why does a competent, intelligent adult suddenly lose all their vocabulary?
So it really comes down to cognitive overload. When someone says, tell me about yourself, they aren't actually giving you a specific prompt. They're handing you a completely blank piece of paper.
Blank piece of paper, yeah.
And the sheer lack of boundaries is what creates the panic. You are suddenly tasked with mapping out your entire existence in 30 seconds?
It's just too much freedom. You start wondering, wait, do they want to know where I went to middle school? Do they want to know my 5-year career goals? My deep-seated fear of spiders?
Precisely. We mistakenly assume the other person is asking for this comprehensive life documentary. We feel this crushing obligation to summarize our childhood, our professional trajectory, our family tree, and our current emotional state.
All at once?
All at once. And we feel we have to do it with absolutely flawless grammar. The brain's linguistic retrieval system simply crashes under that kind of weight.
So to fix the crash, we have to narrow the parameters, right? We have to realize this isn't a documentary you're narrating.
That is the pivotal shift in mindset right there. Simple English is strong English.
Yeah.
An introduction is not a definitive speech given from a podium. It is merely an invitation. You are opening that door we talked about, but just a tiny crack so the other person can peek inside.
All right, so let's look at the mechanics of opening that door. How do we build a framework so our brain doesn't have to panic and frantically search for words?
Well, there is a highly effective 4-step building block formula for this. It acts like a guardrail for your mind. You don't memorize a rigid script, you just lean on the 4 blocks. Let's start with step 1, which is your name.
Your name, which seems obvious, but it's the most fundamental piece of data you carry. Yet how you deliver it carries some subtle social weight, doesn't it?
It definitely does. You essentially have 2 main options here. You can say, hello, my name is, or simply, I'm up.
So, hello, my name is Paul, versus I'm Emma. At first glance, they seem identical in function, but there is a real tonal difference there.
A significant phonetic and social difference, actually. My name is completely correct. It is formal, polite, and very clear. But native English speakers gravitate really heavily toward contractions in everyday speech.
Right, we love squishing words together.
Exactly. Saying I'm physically softens the rhythm of the sentence. It removes a layer of formal separation. When you say I'm Emma, you are subtly signaling a relaxed conversational tone. It feels less like an announcement and more like a friendly handshake.
I can really hear that difference. I'm flows right into the name without a hard stop. Okay, so we've established the first guardrail. I'm, insert your name here. We are grounded. What happens in step 2?
Step 2 grounds you geographically. Your location, where you from, or where do you live. The simplest version is direct, I'm from Brazil, or I live in Tokyo.
Which is fine, it's correct, but it's a bit of a conversational dead end, isn't it? It's just a data point. I've noticed that the most engaging introductions usually weave a little bit of narrative into this step.
You're touching on a really powerful psychological trigger there, the mini story. Human brains are hardwired to pay attention to contrast and movement. If you just give one static fact, the brain files it away and waits for the next thing.
It's boring.
It is. But if you provide 2 facts connected by a transition, you create a narrative gap.
So what does that actually look like in practice?
Well, instead of the static, I'm from Brazil, you say,
Yeah.
I'm from Brazil, but I live in London now.
Oh, I like that. I'm from Brazil, but I live in London now.
Yes. Instantly. I don't just have data. I have a timeline. I have movement.
And what does your brain do when it hears that?
Automatically, my brain generates questions to fill the gap between those 2 places. I want to ask, oh, how is the adjustment to British weather? Or what took you from South America to the UK?
That is the magic of the mini story. It does the heavy lifting for you. You aren't forcing the other person to invent a topic out of thin air. You are naturally laying down a conversational breadcrumb. You are practically handing them their next question, which takes the pressure off both of you.
That is a phenomenal tool. Okay, so we have step 1, identity. I'm Emma. Step 2, geography and movement. I'm from South Korea, but I live in Toronto. Now we move to step 3, which is your profession or your daily focus. And man, this is where I see learners absolutely tie themselves in knots trying to translate complex job titles. It is a massive trap. People try to translate the exact, granular nuance of their corporate hierarchy. But in an introduction, precision is the enemy of connection.
Precision is the enemy of connection. That's good.
It's true. You do not need a multi-clause job description. Broad strokes are so much better. I'm a teacher, I'm a student, or I work in an office. Serves the purpose perfectly.
It makes me think of a movie trailer. Like when a studio wants you to go see a 2-hour complex thriller, they don't show you the director's cut with every character's backstory and the climax of the film in the advertisement.
Right, that would ruin it.
It would be exhausting. They just give you a sharp 30-second preview, the genre, the vibe, the main character. Your introduction is the trailer. You are just giving a quick preview of how you spend your waking hours.
A very apt metaphor.
Yeah.
You are offering the genre of your life, not the script.
Yeah.
But, this brings up a highly sensitive friction point for many learners. What happens when the genre of your life doesn't fit neatly into a corporate title?
Yeah, what if you are between jobs, or you've paused your career to raise children, or you are purely focused on studying? This is crucial to address because the hesitation here is usually rooted in shame.
So much shame.
People feel that if they can't say, I am an engineer or I am a doctor, they are somehow failing the introduction.
And that shame is entirely misplaced. It restricts your ability to connect with people. Never feel the need to hide your current season of life. If you do not have a traditional job title to offer, there is immense quiet power in simply stating your current goal.
Just owning it.
Exactly. Saying, I am learning English, or I am a full-time student of English right now, is an incredibly strong step 3.
It requires vulnerability, sure, but it immediately frames you as someone dedicated to self-improvement. And practically speaking, it explains to the other person why you might be taking your time with your words. It invites empathy rather than judgment.
Exactly. It completely disarms the listener. They immediately understand the context of the interaction and will almost universally extend patience and respect to you.
Okay, so let's review the architecture so far. I'm Jack. I'm from Mexico, but I live in Chicago now. I am learning English. That is structurally flawless. It's clean. It's grammatically sound. We could stop there. But there is a fourth step that acts as the real magnet for conversation, isn't there?
Step 4 is the hobby, or the hook. This is where you inject your actual personality into the framework. Up until now, you've given them your coordinates in the world. Now you give them your humanity.
Your humanity. I like that.
You might say, I am Jack, I work in IT, and I love riding my bicycle. Or, I am Emily, and I am absolutely obsessed with coffee.
I can definitely relate to Emily, but let's play devil's advocate for a second. Why is the hobby necessary at all? If I'm trying to be efficient in a second language, why risk stumbling over vocabulary to talk about bicycles or coffee? Haven't I fulfilled the social contract by giving my name, location, and job?
Well, you've fulfilled the contract, yes, but you haven't built a connection. Human beings don't bond over data points. We bond over shared emotional experiences and interests. If the conversation remains strictly on your geographical origin and your job title, it can very quickly turn into a dry, formal interview.
Right. How is the IT sector in Chicago? It's just rigid.
It's extremely rigid, and frankly, it demands high-level vocabulary to sustain. But a hobby offers this low-stakes, high-reward pivot. If you mention you love cycling, the other person's face might light up and they say, no way, I love cycling. Do you prefer mountain trails or road biking?
And just like that, the language barrier begins to dissolve. You aren't a language learner struggling to explain IT infrastructure anymore. You are just a cyclist talking to another cyclist. You found a side door into a genuine connection.
It provides a massive hit of shared dopamine. So those are your 4 pillars: name, location, profession, hook.
I'm Emma. I'm from South Korea. I work in an office, and I love watching movies on the weekend. It is a really elegant formula. But we need to explore how flexible this framework is, because human interaction isn't a monolith, really.
Not at all.
The way I speak to someone at a backyard barbecue on a Saturday is vastly different from the way I speak to a hiring manager across a mahogany desk on a Tuesday. How do we adapt these 4 blocks to fit the actual room we are in?
Context is everything in language. The architecture, the 4 steps, hold steady. But the tone, the vocabulary, and the specific details you choose to slot into those steps must shift based on the environment. Let's analyze the most high-stakes environment first. The job interview.
Oh, the ultimate spotlight moment. The pressure here is astronomical because your introduction is literally being graded.
It is being evaluated in real time. In a job interview, the tone must elevate to formal, and your narrative focus must narrow aggressively to your professional identity. A very common nervous reaction learners have in interviews is reverting back to childhood. They hear, tell me about yourself, and they start with, well, I was born in a small village in 1995, and I have 2 brothers.
Because they start narrating the life documentary again. They're just trying to be thorough.
But thoroughness here is a miscalibration of the room. The interviewer doesn't need your chronological biography. They need to assess your immediate professional utility. So, you adjust the blocks. Instead of the casual, I work in an office, you elevate the vocabulary. You might say, I'm currently working as a project assistant, and I have over 3 years of experience in team management.
Notice the shift there, listeners. Currently working as, rather than just, I am a, it highlights active experience. But there's a deeper layer to a truly memorable interview introduction, isn't there? It's not just reciting the bullet points on the resume.
The defining factor of a brilliant professional introduction is the inclusion of the why. Anyone can list what they do, but articulating why you do it or what drives you within that profession changes the entire power dynamic of the interview.
Let's break that down with an example. What does that sound like?
Consider the difference between these 2 statements. Statement 1, I am a teacher. I teach math. It's accurate, but sterile.
Very dry.
Now, statement 2, I am a teacher, and I focus on math because I love the exact moment a student's face lights up when they finally understand a complex equation.
Oh, wow. That is a night and day difference. The second statement has a real emotional pulse to it.
It proves you aren't just an automaton reciting rehearsed facts. It shows intrinsic motivation. A hiring manager is going to remember the person who spoke about the student's faces lighting up, long after they've forgotten the person who merely stated they teach math. You use the structure, but you inject professional passion.
Okay, let's swing the pendulum to the exact opposite environment. We leave the boardroom and we walk into a local gym or maybe a neighborhood block party. The strict, formal structure would be a disaster here.
It would alienate people immediately. If someone at the gym says hello while you're stretching and you reply with, "I am currently working as a project assistant with 3 years of experience," they're going to slowly back away. You have failed to read the room.
You sound like a robot. So what blocks do we emphasize in a casual setting?
You lean heavily into the shared environment and the hobby block,
Mm.
and you can honestly often drop the profession block entirely. You anchor yourself to why you're both in that specific place.
Give me an example of how that sounds in the wild.
So you're at the gym, you say, "Hey, I'm Paul. I've been coming to this gym for about a month now. My main goal right now is actually training to run a half marathon next year."
Look at how efficiently Paul adapted the formula. Name Paul. Location or context. This specific gym for a month. Hook the half marathon. He didn't mention his IT job because his IT job has zero relevance to the weights or the treadmills around them.
Precisely. Relevance dictates the content. And we see this in digital environments too, like online classrooms or global Zoom meetings. In a digital classroom, your shared context is the pursuit of knowledge. So a perfect adaptation is, "Hi, I'm Ahmed. I'm from Egypt, and I'm focusing on learning English right now to help pivot my career in marketing."
Short, relevant, and it establishes common ground with everyone else in the Zoom grid. It's fascinating how malleable these 4 steps really are. But I want to push back on step 3, the profession block again, specifically for social situations. Because it's easy to say I'm a teacher or I'm a student, but the modern working world is incredibly convoluted.
It is very messy. Jobs are rarely simple titles anymore.
Right. What if your job is deeply chaotic? What if you are like a logistics coordinator for a supply chain company dealing with delayed shipments and customs nightmares and weird software failures? In your native language, you could vent about that complexity. But in a second language, trying to explain that mess is a linguistic trap.
It is a trap that will instantly drain your confidence. When our daily lives are stressful or complex, we feel this psychological urge to explain every nuanced detail so the other person truly grasps our reality. But if you lack the specialized vocabulary in English to describe international customs regulations, you will stumble, hesitate, and feel foolish.
So what's the workaround?
The strategic move here is to abstract the chaos into a core truth.
Abstract the chaos. I want to spend some time on this because it's honestly a lifesaver. There is a brilliant illustrative story from our sources about a hotel manager named Jack that perfectly captures this concept.
Oh, Jack's story is the ultimate study in simplification. Imagine the daily reality of managing a busy hotel. It is pure, unpredictable chaos. Jack doesn't just manage spreadsheets. He manages bizarre human behavior. In one instance, he has to placate a furious guest who is complaining that the shower plumbing sounds exactly like a singing cat.
A singing cat in the pipes. I mean, how do you even deal with that?
You don't. And in another instance, he has a guest staring out the window, totally irate, demanding that Jack do something because the moon outside is too small, and the guest specifically requested a room with a bigger moon.
A bigger moon. That is spectacular absurdity. Now imagine Jack at a dinner party. Someone casually asks, "So what do you do for work?" If Jack tries to explain the singing, plumbing, and the moon complaints in a language he is just learning, he is going to drown in missing vocabulary. How do you even translate the absurdity of a small moon?
You simply don't. You bypass the specific details entirely. Jack looks at the core function of his chaotic days. What is he actually doing amidst the cats and the moons? He is fixing things for people. So when asked, Jack uses simple, impenetrable blocks of truth. He says, "I work in a hotel. I help guests. I solve problems."
I solve problems. That is a masterclass in abstraction. It is perfectly accurate. It covers the plumbing, it covers the moon, it covers the spreadsheets, and it requires only elementary vocabulary.
And it protects your fluency. If you are a software engineer untangling legacy code, you don't say, "I debug object-oriented frameworks." You say, "I work with computers. I build systems. I solve puzzles." Find the verb at the center of your job and let the chaos fall away.
This is deeply empowering. Okay, so we've constructed the perfect script. We have the 4 steps. We know how to adjust for the boardroom or the gym, and we know how to abstract our messy jobs into simple verbs. But, and this is a massive but, having the perfect script in your head is completely useless if your body enters fight or flight mode the second you open your mouth.
We absolutely must address the physiology of speaking, because the mind and the vocal cords are intimately connected. If your nervous system is panicking, your perfect vocabulary is completely inaccessible.
Let's dismantle a very pervasive myth right now, the myth of perfect confidence. I think many learners look at native speakers or they look at seasoned English teachers and they assume those people possess some magical, unwavering lack of fear. They think, oh, I will finally speak up when I feel that confident.
Waiting for the fear to completely evaporate is a recipe for permanent silence. The reality, and this is admitted freely by veteran language instructors, is that everyone experiences a spike in heart rate when introducing themselves to a room full of strangers, even native speakers. Even the experts. Feeling exposed is a universal human baseline.
That changes the definition of confidence entirely, doesn't it?
It does. Confidence is not the eradication of fear. Confidence is the willingness to speak despite the fear. It is feeling your hands shake slightly, feeling that flutter in your chest, taking a deep breath and saying, "Hello, my name is..." Anyway, the action is the confidence, not the emotion.
So how do we physically support that action? If our brain is terrified, how do we use our body to trick our nervous system into calming down?
The most potent, immediate biological tool you have is your facial expression, specifically a genuine smile.
It sounds almost cliche, just smile more, but the mechanics behind it are actually profound.
It is rooted in evolutionary biology. When you smile, you engage the vagus nerve, which signals to your own brain that you are not in mortal danger, reducing your cortisol levels. Simultaneously, it acts as a visual cue to the person you're speaking to. It tells their primal brain, hey, I am friendly, I am not a threat, and I am happy to interact.
It's a biological feedback loop. You smile, which lowers their defenses, which makes their body language warmer, which in turn signals to your brain that the interaction is safe, lowering your anxiety even further.
Exactly. But there is a humorous, highly practical caveat to deploying that smile, beautifully illustrated by the story of Paul at a networking event.
Oh, poor Paul. The chocolate cake incident.
Yes. Paul spotted an opportunity to introduce himself to someone important. He remembered his 4 steps. He remembered to smile. But he timed it terribly because he'd just taken a massive, indulgent bite of chocolate cake.
So he strides over, tries to beam a warm, inviting smile, and attempts to articulate, "I am Paul," with the mouth absolutely packed with frosting and cake crumbs.
It's a very funny visual, but the underlying lesson is vital for pacing. Complete your current action before initiating speech. Swallow your food. Take a deliberate breath. Establish eye contact. Smile. And then speak. Do not rush the sequence.
Rushing is the enemy. I see this constantly. When we are nervous, we naturally want to escape the spotlight, so we hit the accelerator. We try to cram our entire introduction into 3 seconds of rapid-fire speech, hoping it will just be over faster.
And that speed directly causes the exact mistakes we are terrified of making. Speed drastically increases cognitive load. Your brain cannot translate, conjugate, and articulate at race car speeds in a second language. You will stumble. And that stumble will trigger a massive panic response. The golden rule of language delivery is this: slow English is strong English.
Slow English is strong English. If you are listening to this, I want you to mentally tattoo that phrase on your brain. You do not need to speak at the cadence of an auctioneer to sound fluent.
In fact, speaking deliberately and utilizing pauses actually projects more authority. Many learners are terrified of silence. If there's a 1-second pause while they search for a word, they panic, thinking the other person assumes they are unintelligent.
But how does a native speaker actually perceive that pause?
They perceive it as thoughtfulness. Think of speech like a piece of music. The rests, the silences between the notes, are what give the melody its rhythm and emotional weight. A well-placed pause shows that you are carefully selecting your words. Hi, I'm Maria. I'm from Spain. That pacing sounds incredibly grounded and confident.
It allows the listener's brain to digest the information, too. Now let's talk about the verbal traps we fall into when the nerves do get the better of us. There is one phrase that I hear learners use constantly as a defensive shield, and it drives me absolutely crazy.
You are referring to the preemptive apology, starting an interaction with, "I am so sorry, my English is very bad."
Yes. Why is that such a destructive way to open a door?
Because it instantly alters the status dynamic of the conversation. When you apologize for your English, you are subconsciously begging for leniency. You are framing your bilingualism, which is a massive intellectual achievement, by the way, as a deficit or a burden on the other person.
It sets a tone of inadequacy before you've even shared your actual name.
Exactly. Instead of apologizing, you reframe the reality using step 3 of our formula. You don't say, "Sorry, my English is bad." You say, "With pride, I am currently learning English." One is a plea for pity. The other is a statement of ambition. Native speakers will respect the ambition every single time.
The second major trap we fall into is the illusion of safety through rote memorization.
Memorizing a word-for-word script is like building a house of cards on a very shaky table. A formula, like our 4 steps, is a flexible skeleton. You can hang different words on it. But a memorized script is rigid. If you memorize a paragraph and in the heat of the moment, your brain drops the adjective in sentence 2.
The whole system crashes. You freeze. You can't skip to sentence 3 because your brain is desperately searching for the missing word in sentence 2.
You become completely paralyzed. The strategy is to memorize the sequence of ideas, not the specific vocabulary. Idea 1, identity. Idea 2, origin. If you forget the fancy word for your profession, your brain, guided by the idea, will easily substitute a simpler word. I am a financial analyst. Becomes I work with money. The idea survives.
But mistakes are inevitable, right? We are going to use the wrong preposition or mess up a verb tense. What is the elegant way to recover when we hear ourselves say he goes instead of he goes?
You use a natural repair phrase. You do not gasp. You do not apologize profusely. You simply catch the error, smile lightly, use a pivot phrase, and correct the course.
What does a pivot phrase sound like?
The most common and natural is simply, if you say, I have lived here for 2 years, the conversation doesn't even skip a beat.
It signals to the listener that you have self-awareness of your grammar, but it doesn't derail the momentum of the chat. It's fluid.
And fundamentally, we must remember that a grammatical mistake in a social setting is completely benign. You are not writing a legal contract. You're trying to connect. Mistakes are just the visible evidence of your effort.
Okay, let's picture the scene. You've mastered your body language, you took a breath, you smiled, you delivered your 4 steps flawlessly. Hi, I'm Jack, I'm from Mexico, I work in IT, and I love hiking. You hit every mark, you feel fantastic, and then the other person just nods and says nice, and silence descends.
Ooh, the dreaded dead air. This is where introductions fail, not because of bad grammar, but because of poor conversational mechanics.
Let's delve into the mechanics of keeping the spark alive. How do we prevent that agonizing silence?
The best analogy for an active conversation is a game of tennis. When you introduce yourself, you are serving the ball over the net. It is a great serve. But if you just stand there with your racket down after the serve, the game is over. You must invite them to swing back.
You can't just dump your data and expect them to carry the weight of the interaction. You have to ask a question.
It is a conversational obligation, and it doesn't require complex, multi-layered interrogations. The most elegant returns in conversational tennis are incredibly brief. You simply append a redirect to the end of your introduction. I love hiking. And you. Or how about you?
Let's model the rhythm of that. Hi, I'm Emma. I'm a teacher, and I love reading historical fiction. How about you?
Notice how the energy seamlessly transfers. You have surrendered the spotlight and given them the floor. It relieves your anxiety because you are no longer the one performing, and it flatters them because you are showing immediate interest in their life.
But what if they answer, oh, I like reading too, and then the ball just drops dead again? Some people are terrible at conversational tennis. How do we mine for new topics without making it feel like a police interrogation?
When the direct rally fails, you pivot to the shared environment. You mine the common ground. You are both standing in the same physical or digital space for a reason. Use that space as the catalyst.
Because it requires absolutely zero background knowledge about their life.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you are at a friend's party and the conversation stalls, you look around and ask, so how do you know the host? If you are at a sprawling industry conference, you ask, is this your first time attending this event? If you are at a coffee shop waiting in a ridiculously long line, you ask, is it always this busy on a Tuesday?
You are utilizing the immediate reality to build a bridge. But I want to address a nightmare scenario that I know our listeners face. You hit the ball over the net, you ask, and you. And the other person enthusiastically hits the ball back at 200 miles an hour.
Ah, the race car speaker.
Yes. They launch into a paragraph packed with local slang, swallowed consonants, and idioms you've never heard, and you are instantly hopelessly lost. The instinct here is just to nod and pretend you understand.
Nodding and pretending is a toxic strategy. It provides false comfort for about 10 seconds until they ask you a direct question based on what they just said, and your blank stare reveals the deception. The entire interaction collapses in extreme awkwardness.
So how do you assert control when the linguistic speed limit is broken?
You use your magic phrases to forcefully but politely pause the game. You must advocate for your own comprehension. You look them in the eye and say, could you speak a little slower, please? Or, I'm so sorry, I'm still learning English. Could you repeat that last part?
But the fear, the visceral fear, is that asking them to slow down will make you look incompetent.
It is a completely unfounded fear. Consider the psychology of a native speaker in that moment. Native speakers are generally oblivious to how fast they talk. When you politely ask them to slow down and remind them that you are operating in a second language, it triggers an immediate shift in their perception.
They don't judge you.
Quite the opposite. They realize the immense cognitive effort you are putting in just to speak with them. It commands respect. Vulnerability in language learning is perceived as bravery, not stupidity. They will almost universally apologize for their speed, adjust their cadence, and become much more invested in making sure the communication is successful.
That is deeply reassuring. Reclaiming your agency in a conversation is a powerful step. Now, let's talk about the other half of the tennis match. We aren't always serving. A massive portion of fluency is how you behave when the other person is talking.
You are referring to active listening, specifically the linguistic concept of back-channeling.
Yes, back-channeling. What is the function of this? Because honestly, it seems like just making noises.
It is far more than making noises. Back-channeling is the continuous audio feedback you provide while someone else is speaking to let them know the connection is still alive. If you remain completely silent and motionless while someone talks for 2 minutes, they will subconsciously feel like they are talking to a brick wall and wrap up their story very quickly.
It feels incredibly awkward to receive no feedback. So what are the tools of back-channeling?
They are tiny, low-effort conversational anchors. As they speak, you drop in phrases like, "Oh, nice. Really?
Oh.
Wow, that sounds amazing. I see."
Oh, wow. Really? It requires almost zero grammatical processing power from the learner.
None at all. But its social impact is massive. It validates the speaker, maintains the conversational momentum, and gives you time to rest your active translation muscles while remaining deeply engaged in the interaction.
Okay, we have systematically deconstructed this entire process. We understand the neurology of the blank slate. We have our 4 architectural blocks. We know how to adapt our messy jobs into simple truths. We know the biological power of a smile and the strategic use of pauses and back-channeling. We have the theory.
But theory is just potential energy.
Exactly. You can read 100 books on the biomechanics of a marathon, you can study the tread on the running shoes, but until your feet hit the pavement, you are not a runner. The muscle memory doesn't exist.
Fluency is fundamentally a physical act as much as it is a mental one. The muscles of your jaw, tongue, and diaphragm need to be trained to execute the phonetic patterns of English.
Which brings us to a crucial interactive segment. We are not just going to talk at you today, we are going to train with you. We are going to use a technique called shadowing.
For listeners unfamiliar with the term, shadowing is a highly aggressive, highly effective mimicry technique. You listen to a native speaker and you attempt to repeat exactly what they're saying, matching their intonation, their pauses, and their rhythm, almost instantaneously, like a vocal shadow.
You don't wait for them to finish the whole paragraph, you follow right behind them, echoing the sounds. Why is this specific technique so praised by linguists?
Because it bypasses the analytical grammatical filter of the brain. When we normally speak, we think of a concept, translate it, check the grammar, and then articulate it. Shadowing removes the first 3 steps. You're purely focusing on the physical sensation of producing the sounds. It builds neural pathways that link hearing directly to articulation.
But let's be honest, the first time you do it, it feels utterly ridiculous. You feel like a parrot.
It feels incredibly strange. You have to abandon your self-consciousness. There is a legendary story about an English learner named Emma that highlights this perfectly.
Oh, Emma in the coffee shop. I love this. Paint the picture for us.
So Emma was sitting in a quiet, crowded cafe. She had her noise-canceling headphones on, and she was diligently practicing her shadowing technique using an audio clip from an action movie.
A high-stakes action movie.
Yes. She was completely immersed, focusing on the rhythm of the actor's voice. And without realizing that her own volume was increasing to match the movie, she suddenly shouted out loud into the dead silence of the cafe, "Let's go! We don't have much time!"
Oh my gosh, I can only imagine the faces of the people drinking their lattes.
Half the cafe jumped, thinking there was an actual emergency. She had to take off her headphones, turn bright red, and explain she was just practicing her English.
But despite the embarrassment, Emma had the right idea. She was committing physically to the language. And that is exactly what we want you to do right now.
Yes. We are going to guide you through 5 shadowing practices. If you are alone in your car or walking in a park or washing dishes, we want you to actually speak out loud. Feel the vibration in your throat. Notice how your lips move differently than they do in your native language.
I will say a sentence and we will leave a gap of silence. In that space, you, the listener, will repeat the sentence out loud. Fill in the blanks with your own real information. Do not overthink it. Just feel the rhythm. Let's prepare. Roll your shoulders back. Take a deep breath in. Let it out. Smile, engage that vagus nerve. Practice one. Your foundation. Hello, my name is.
Yes, say it right now. Fill in your name out loud.
Good. Notice the connection between name and is. Let's do it again, slower this time. Hello, my name is.
Excellent. Feel the shape of the words. Now let's test the contraction, the softer approach.
I'm.
Just that one syllable and your name. Try it.
Feel how brief that is. Moving to practice 2. Geography. Add your country. I am from.
State your country out loud right now.
Now let's create the narrative gap. The mini story. Add your current city. I live in.
Say the city you are in.
Perfect. Practice 3. This is the sentence of vulnerability and strength. Say this with absolute pride in your voice. I am learning English.
Let the weight of that settle.
Yeah.
You are expanding your mind. Say it once more and own it.
I am learning English.
Beautifully done. Practice 4 is your armor against perfectionism. This is how you accept the messy reality of the journey.
I am not perfect, but I am improving.
Listen to the cadence of that, the rise and fall. Try to match the melody.
I am not perfect, but I am improving.
Fantastic. And finally, practice 5, reinforcing the action.
Shadowing helps me speak confidently.
If you push past the awkwardness and actually spoke to an empty room just now, you are actively rewiring your brain. That physical friction is the exact mechanism of growth.
It takes genuine courage to practice out loud like that, and this interactive moment naturally leads us into how we maintain this momentum. Because a 1-hour deep dive is fantastic, but language isn't acquired in massive, isolated bursts.
It absolutely is not. English is not a subject like history, where you can cram a list of dates into your short-term memory for an exam and then just forget them. Language is a behavioral habit. It must be integrated into the fabric of your daily routine.
So what is the optimal dosage? If someone is highly motivated, should they block out 3 hours every Sunday to just drill grammar?
Neurologically, that is incredibly inefficient. Binge studying treats the language like an exhausting chore, and it leads to massive burnout. The brain learns through frequent low-stress exposure. 10 minutes of active English practice every single day is vastly superior to a 2-hour session once a week.
10 minutes a day, that lowers the barrier to entry so much. You don't need a desk and a textbook for 10 minutes.
You don't. You can shadow a podcast while you fold your laundry. You can narrate your morning routine to the bathroom mirror. I am picking up my toothbrush. The water is cold. You can read a very short article on your phone while waiting for the bus. It is about consistency, not intensity. You are constantly reminding your brain that English is a relevant tool in your environment.
And as you build that daily 10-minute habit, there's a core philosophy we want you to carry with you. It's a concept we like to call the inner sun.
The inner sun is a metaphor for radical self-compassion during the learning process. The path to fluency is literally paved with errors. You are going to use the wrong word. You are going to mispronounce things. You are going to have days where your tongue just feels like lead.
And on those days, the instinct is harsh self-criticism. We tell ourselves, I'm so stupid, I'll never get this.
Which releases stress hormones and further blocks learning. The inner sun asks you to change how you react to your own mistakes. Think about the universal experience of watching a toddler learn to walk.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
A toddler pulls themselves up on the edge of a coffee table. They take one wobbly, uncertain step, lose their balance, and fall flat on the floor. What is the reaction of the adults in the room? Do they point and laugh? Do they scold the child and say, wow, you are terrible at biomechanics, you should just give up on walking?
Of course not. That would be insane. We gasp, we smile, we clap our hands, and we encourage them to try again.
Why? Because we implicitly understand that falling down is not a failure. Falling down is the absolute, non-negotiable prerequisite to learning how to walk. You have to fall to understand balance.
So why on earth do we treat our adult brains with such cruelty when we stumble in a new language?
We completely forget to give ourselves grace. You are a toddler learning to walk in a new linguistic world. Every mispronounced word, every forgotten vocabulary term is just a wobble. It is evidence of growth. Fuel your journey with the warmth of the inner sun, not the harshness of criticism. Kindness sustains motivation, punishment destroys it.
That is a vital perspective shift. We have covered an immense landscape today. We started by dissecting the terrifying cognitive overload of the blank slate. We engineered a robust, adaptable four-step architecture to ground ourselves. We learned how to edit our complex realities into simple truths. We explored the biological armor of a smile, the strategic power of the pause, and how to rally back and forth in conversational tennis.
And we engaged the physical muscles of fluency through shadowing. It has been a comprehensive look at not just the mechanics of English, but the psychology of human connection.
And as we bring this deep dive to a close, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought to carry into your day. We talked at the very beginning about how an introduction is an invitation, a way of opening a door to another person, but I think there is a deeper layer to it.
What do you see when you look deeper?
Well, think about that spotlight moment again. The fear, the adrenaline. When you push past all of that, when you engage your body, smile, and speak those words in a language that is not your own, you aren't just translating your old self into English vocabulary. It's not just a data transfer.
It's an act of creation.
Exactly. What if every single time you step up and say, hello, my name is, you are actually inventing a brand new, slightly braver version of who you are. You are expanding the boundaries of your identity with every single syllable.
That is a profound realization. You're not just learning English. English is allowing you to write a new, larger narrative for your life.
You are writing a new story. So the next time someone approaches you, shakes your hand, and asks, tell me about yourself, don't let the blank slate terrify you. It is not a test designed to expose your flaws. It is a blank canvas. And you hold the brush.
Take a breath, smile, and paint the first stroke. Your English is growing stronger with every single attempt.
Thank you so genuinely for spending your time and your energy with us on this deep dive. Keep practicing, keep giving yourself grace, and keep stepping into that braver version of yourself. Until next time.